Labhu, the old shikari of my village, was a born liar. Therefore, he had won the reputation of being the best storyteller in our parts, and, though an ordinary sweeper, he was respected by everyone. He was a thin little man, with the glint of a lance and the glide of an arrow. His wiry, weather-beaten frame must have had immense reserves of energy, to judge by the way he could chase stags up hills behind our village and run after the bay mare of Subedar Deep Singh. Subedar would engage him for a season when some English official or a rich white merchant would visit him. It was perhaps this wonderful physical agility of his that had persuaded him to adopt the profession of a shikari. Labhu also had a sensitive, dark face. His lower lip trembled as it pronounced the first accents of a poignant verse or the last words of a gruesome hunting story. And it was the strange spell that his tragic verses and weird stories cast on me that made me his devoted follower through childhood. He taught me to run with the hare and hunt with the hounds. He taught me the way to track all wild animals, and he taught me to cook a story to tell my father for not staying at home on a hot afternoon. Labhu, I would say, I'm sure it is impossible to track any prey when you are half up the side of a hillock. Acha, he would say, I will show you. Stand still and listen. I did so, and we both heard a pebble drop. Up he darted on the stony ridge in the direction from where the sound had come, jumping from crag to crag, securing a foothold on a small stone here and a sure one on a boulder there, till he was tearing through a flock of sheep towards a little gully where a ram had taken shelter in a cave, confident that it would escape its pursuer. All right, I would say. You may have been able to track this ram, but I don't believe that story of yours about the devil ram you saw when you were hunting with the Subedar. I swear by God Almighty, he said, it is true. The Subedar will tell you that he saw this terrible apparition with me. It was a beast about the size of an elephant, with eyes as big as hen's eggs, and a beard as long as that of Maulvi Shahdin, the priest of the mosque, only not henna-dyed and red, but blue-black. It had huge ears as big as an elephant's, which did not flap, but pricked up like the ears of the Subedar's horse. It had a nose like that of the wife of the missionary Sahib, and it had square jaws which showed teeth almost as big as the chunks of marble which lie outside the temple. It appeared unexpectedly near the peak of Devi Parbat. The Subedar and I had ascended about 12,000 feet up the mountain in search of game when suddenly out of the spirit world there was the clattering of stones and boulders, the whistling of sharp winds, the gurgling of thunder, and a huge crack on the side of the mountain. Then an enormous figure seemed to rise. From a distance it seemed to both of us like a dark patch. It soon stood there, looking at us with its glistening white eyes as big as hen's eggs. It sneezed and ripped the mountainside with a kick of its 4 feet and disappeared. The mountain shook and the Subedar trembled, while I stood bravely and laughed till I wept with joy at my good luck of having seen such a marvelous devil god of the tribe of rams. I shall show him to you one of these days. Labhu, you don't mean to say so, I said, half incredulous but fascinated by the chimera. Labhu continued, this is nothing compared to the other vision that was granted to me when I was on the journey to Ladakh, hunting with Jolly John Sahib. And he began to narrate a fantastic story of a huge snake, which was so improbable that even I did not believe it. Oh, you are a fool, Labhu, I said, and you are a liar. Everybody says so, and I don't believe you at all. My mother says I am silly to believe your tales. All right then, if you don't believe my stories, why do you come here to listen to them? He said with wounded pride. Go, I shall never tell you anything, and I shall certainly not let you accompany me to the hunts. All right, I said, chagrined and stubborn. I don't want to speak to you either. And I ran home bursting with indignation at having forced a quarrel upon Labhu, when really he only told me his stories for my amusement. Labhu went away for a while on a hunting tour with the Subedar. He didn't come back to the village when this tour finished because Subedar Deep Singh's eldest son Kuldeep Singh, who was a lieutenant in the army, took him for a trip across the Himalayas to Nepal. During this time, though I regretted Labhu's absence, I lent my ear readily to the malicious misrepresentation of his character that the Subedar and his employees, and occasionally also my father, indulged in. Because, though better equipped than Labhu, they were not such good hunters as he was. This Labhu can only wait by a forest pool or a safe footpath to shoot at some unfortunate beast, said the Subedar. And often he shoots in the dark with that inefficient powder gun of his. He is no good except for tracking. Yes, said my father, he is a vain liar. The only beast he dared to shoot at while he was with me was a hare, and even that he hit in the leg. I waited eagerly for Labhu's return to confirm these stories of his incompetence. I thought I would ask him point blank whether he was as bad a hunter as the Subedar and my father made him out to be. When Labhu came back, however, he limped about and seemed ill. I was very sad to see him broken and dispirited, and I forgot all the scandal I had heard about him. He was no longer the garrulous man who sat telling stories to old men and young boys, but a strangely quiet creature who lay in a stupor all day, moaning and murmuring to himself in a prolonged delirium, except that he occasionally walked around with a huge staff in his hand in the evenings. I was afraid to go near him, because he always wore a forbidding, angry look. But the villagers didn't seem to think there was anything wrong with Labhu, as I heard them say, now that we have no patience with him and his stories, he spends most of his time telling them to himself, the fool. I owed a loyalty to Labhu, for I had discovered a kinship in my make-up for all those extravagances for which the shikari was so well known. So I went up to him one day, as he lay on a broken string bed near his mud hut, under the shelter which a young people gave him. You have returned then, Master Labhu? I said. Yes, he said. I have been back some time, son. I looked for you, but you did not seem to be about. But you know, the man who is slain cannot walk even to his own house. This leg of mine hurts, and I can't get about as I used to. What happened to your leg then? I asked, realizing that he had forgotten all about our past quarrels and was as kind and communicative to me as before. Did you fall down a cliff or something? No, he said in a tired voice, and he kept quiet for a long while. What happened then? I persisted. You know, son, Labhu began, at first pale and hesitant, then smiling and lifting his eyebrows in the familiar manner of the old days. I went away on a hunting tour with Subedar's eldest son Kuldeep Singh and some of his friends. We went to Nepal through the Kulu Valley. They had no experience of hunting in this or in any other part of the world, and I led them across the trails I knew and the ones that the local shikaris had told me about. That boy, Kuldeep, I don't know what he does in the army, but he can't shoot at any range. And the sahibs with him were clumsy white men. I would point to a beast with my stick, and though they could see the hide before their eyes, they would bungle with their guns or would be too noisy on their feet. cautioning the bull we had been tracking. I would grunt, shrug my shoulders, and would not mind because they were like children. They would finish hundreds of cartridges without shooting anything, and daily begged me to help them to secure some game. At first, I told them that game doesn't taste sweet unless it is shot by oneself. But then I took pity on them and thought that I would secure them a good mixed bag. I shot 12 tigers with my gun and 15 panthers in the course of 7 days, and many stags. On the eighth day, we saw a monster which had the body of a bear, the head of a reindeer, the feet of a goat, the tail of a wild bull, and a glistening, fibrous tissue all around it like the white silken veil which the Rani of Bundi wore when she came to visit Subedar Deep Singh's wife. Kuldeep Singh and the Sahibs were petrified of this apparition and said it was the devil himself who had the shape of an earthly being and would soon breathe a breath that would mix with the still air of the night and poison all of us. They were all for killing it outright, while I was sure that it was only a princess of the royal house of Nepal who had been transformed by some magician into this fantastic shape and size. And I wanted to catch it alive and bring it home to be my bride. Labhu went on to relate how beautiful she was and how he resolved to restore her to her normal self by reading magical incantations. I told her I loved her, he continued, and she smiled shyly. But some fool, I think it was the Subedar's son, fired a volley of shots, which frightened her. So she ran, merged with the air, and began to ascend the snowy peaks of Kailash Parbat. I was bent on rescuing my beloved, and I leapt from one mountain to another, calling after her to stop. But that Kuldeep and the Sahibs kept on shooting and roused the magician who kept guard over her. And this evil sage threw a huge mountain of snow at me to kill me. I just blew a hot breath, and the mountain of snow cracked into a million pieces and hung about the sky like glittering stars. Then the magician struck the earth with his feet and opened up a grave to bury me alive. I leapt right across the fissure and found myself on a peak in the land of the Lama, who never dies. By now, of course, the magician had hidden the beauty away in some cave, so I gave up the chase and made a huge leap across the Himalayas for home. And as you landed this side of the mountains, you sprained your foot? I said. Labhu lifted his eyebrows funnily in the manner of the old days and, laughing, said, "Have I told you this story before then?"